A strength a day, be your best every day. Hi, I'm Adimus, founder and director of Strength Optimizer. I aim to help you develop and amplify your strengths so that you can be your best selves and enable greatness in others. Have you ever wondered why you do what you do, why you like certain things, and why you're better at some things than others? And there is a reason. The reason is your strengths. Your strengths are your natural talents, which are developed through years of intentional practice. When you're using your strengths, you're performing at your best. You also feel competent, engaged, energized, and authentic. In this CliftonStrengths series, you will meet 34 individuals with different kinds of backgrounds, professions, and all walks of life. But they all share a common theme. That is, they have been actively and intentionally using their strengths to achieve success, enhance well-being, and enable greatness in others. And here are their CliftonStrengths stories. Thank you. Hi, I'm Adimus, founder and director of Strength Optimizer. Thank you for watching Strength Optimizer, the CliftonStrengths series. Today, we have Kate Smith joining us. Kate is an acting assistant principal at Parkville College, Melbourne. How are you doing, Kate?
Hi, Demas. I'm really well. Thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Once again, thank you so much for taking your time to share with us your top CliftonStrengths.
You're welcome.
All right. So tell us a little bit more in terms of your role as an assistant principal at the Parkville College then, Kate.
So thanks, Demas. So I manage one of the sites that's at Parkville College. Parkville College is a school that's situated within the youth justice facilities that run across Victoria. So we've got 3 youth justice facilities, the Parkville Justice Facility and the Malmesbury Justice Facility, and I work at Malmesbury.
Okay, yep.
And I work with the young people that are sentenced that are over 18.
All right, okay. And how long have you been in that role, Kate?
So I've been in the role for, this is my 2nd year now. I've been working in education for about 20 years, but this is my 2nd year at Parkville College.
Okay, yeah. And so far, what do you learn about what you do, Kate?
So what I have learned about what I do is that it is so important for vulnerable young people, which are every young person that ends up in a youth justice facility. It's so important that they feel like they have a voice and that they feel like they have autonomy and choices about what they're doing while they're here and then what they want to do once they leave our facility. I've also learnt that you know, it just takes so much patience and compassion and tolerance to work in a system that's as complex as a youth justice system, which actually realistically involves 2 major government department stakeholders, but then many other government and non-government stakeholders. It's just a really complex machine.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine, juggling and working across the systems and stakeholders. There's so many meetings and planning, evaluations, and compromising, negotiating, accommodating, just the whole lot.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So with regard to your specific role, is it more of working directly with the young people, or is it more of the operational manager type of position, the roles that you're in?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Adimus, thank you. So in a normal school, an assistant principal would have a largely operational role, but at Parkville College, the role is about 1/3 working with staff and coaching staff, about 1/3 working with students and making sure that their voice and that their needs are really heard and addressed, and about 1/3 strategic.
All right. So you are wearing multiple hats at the same time.
Yeah. But having said that, like I would guess that most people in their jobs are wearing multiple hats. But yeah, it does.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it is. It is a job where you need to sort of manage all three of those priorities. I think reasonably equally. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So today is about Clifton strengths. So tell us, what is your top Clifton strengths then?
So my top Clifton strength is strategic. So it's funny.
Right.
It's funny that you
The
asked.
other one that you talk about strategic roles.
Yeah, so my top strength is strategic, which I have to admit it wasn't a massive surprise to me, and I guess became less of a surprise to me when I really read what that strength was all about.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that the term strategies can mean different things to different people. But according to Clifton Strengths, people who are exceptionally talented in the strategic strengths, they create alternative ways to proceed. In the sense that when they're faced with any given scenario, they can very quickly spot the relevant patterns and issues. So to what extent do you agree with that definition, Kate?
Do you know what? So at our workplace, we've actually recently done the Clifton Strengths audit with our leadership team. And when I was talking to them about what this strength meant to me, the first thing that I did was actually be really transparent with them and let them know that when I think and when I'm listening, I actually process information in a mind map.
Also, directions, can see all the trees and branches, leaves going out.
Right. So, and I actually said to them, oh, look, I don't know, have any of you ever noticed that sometimes when I'm speaking, I'm actually doing this a lot while I'm speaking? And I'm like, that's because I'm referring to a mind map that's in my head while I'm talking. And that helps me to ground myself in that mind map as I'm talking to them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It certainly made sense to them. And I think that sometimes when I'm listening to people when they're talking, sometimes I have noticed, and people sometimes call me on it, that I am making eye contact at certain points, but at other points my eyes are kind of moving around the room a bit, and that's because I've got this mind map in my head that I'm also sort of filling out as they're talking, and that helps me to process that information. So it was interesting to talk to staff about that, because that helps them to really understand, I guess, some of the idiosyncrasies that I have and how I'm using that as a strength. And using that to really process well, but also that, like, sometimes maybe it plays out a little bit differently in real life. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. Once again, I guess that out of curiosity, so when you are doing the mind mapping in your head and also listening and processing, analyzing a lot of information, at that moment, were you actually so-called in your own head zone that you kind of tune off, or you actually able to listen and process and analyze and draw at the same time? So you're still pretty much in the presence.
So it's funny. It's almost, do you know when you watch a TV show and they've almost got like a glass, like whiteboard that they're writing on, and they're writing things out. It's almost like I've got that as like a layer of my vision, right? So I'm looking at it's very, and I didn't actually realize that I do that until I started to look into this Clifton strength and actually go, well, what am I doing here? And really start to reflect on that. But I guess the other way it pops up a lot in my workplace is that sometimes, so what I have noticed I do, and I notice it because sometimes people potentially call me out for being sometimes a little bit negative when people present a new idea. And I keep having to reinforce to them, no, I'm not saying no. I'm just trying to identify like what are some of the obstacles we're going to come across so that we can plan around that.
Yeah.
To make sure that this is successful. So me asking, so I notice it because people bring it up, I guess, as something that can maybe not be effective when we're talking about a new idea. But I guess what I'm doing in my head is, as people are talking about new ideas, trying to see, well, what is the likely direction that this will go in? What are the likely barriers, and how are we going to get around those barriers in order for this to be successful? So that's the other way I think that it pops up a lot in the workplace. I do think sometimes it's a strength that in the workplace can create some tension. And sometimes I guess I need to think really critically about how I turn that strength down or leave that strength. Maybe I'm processing it, but I'm not saying it out loud. But I do think that it's a strength that long-term gain is really, really useful.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you mentioned about the ability to either tune up or tune down the strategic strengths, because at the end of the day, it is a strength that I guess that they have benefited you a lot, and also the people around
100%.
you. Yeah, but sometimes it depends to the people who you're interacting with, depends to the context. Just having that discernment, or we call it the wisdom, to know how to play around with your strategy strength, I guess that is a wonderful, wonderful things to do. I can't help when you talk about doing this visual mind mapping, just reminds me of a lot of the past sci-fi movies that I watched. For example, I guess that I'm not very familiar, the Iron Man's, Tony Stark will always have this very fancy kind of mind mapping technology that he can just use his fingers to draw things, and then things will pop out 3D. Say, wow, so futuristic.
Well, not to me. That's just my brain.
That's right. Well, wonderful, wonderful. So how does this strategic strength show up at your day-to-day work then, Kate?
So I think in terms of like my day-to-day work, I think the strategic strength really, really helps me to think critically about like what are the most important things, what are our big ticket goals, and how is what we're doing each day aligning with those goals.
Okay.
And if there are barriers that come up with those goals, how can we find other ways to work this so that we can still achieve our end goal, even if we're taking a different pathway than we first imagined? I think that's what I'm really good at. And I also think what I'm really good at is drawing links between two ideas that might seem actually pretty different ideas at the same time, and how we can leverage both of those ideas to get the best for both projects. I think that is something I'm genuinely pretty good at.
Yeah.
And that's that strength, I think.
Exactly. I guess some people also use the metaphor analogy like a professional chess player, and they just don't look into what's right in front of them, but they'll be able to see 2 steps, 3 steps ahead. Not only that, but also different options, possibilities, how they related to one another, and whether it's come up with all the different type of alternative ways to join two similarly different ideas together to achieve a common goals. I think that certainly can see that it shines very strongly in your role, especially as a assistant principal, where again you have to juggle working with the systems, the stakeholders, and the students as well.
Yeah, correct. And I think too, sometimes linking people together who could be working together, I think is something that strength really leans into. I think that also relies on other strengths around like communication and maybe woo, I guess.
For people who are not familiar with woo, it stands for winning others over, which is another CliftonStrengths, talking the person have the ability to use their communication skills, their charisma, they just enjoy, I guess, making the impressions of building the bridge with people.
Yeah.
That's what WOO stands for. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, and yeah, so I think that's also something that perhaps I could lean into more a little bit in terms of like really I think the strategic side of me often can see the two people that need to work together.
Yeah.
Go, here you go, you guys need to know each other. There you go. What I think I probably need to do is draw in some of those other strengths around that to support that a little bit better. But yeah.
That's right. And again, when we talk about strengths, even though we identify, normally we talk about top 5 or top 10s, but very rarely they work in isolations. A lot of time they do interacts with the other variety of our strengths, whether we are consciously aware or not. Yeah, right. Okay. So can you give us one example, if possible, like how has the strategic strengths helped you succeeded in the past?
Yeah. So it's a good question.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that we're working on at Malmesbury at the moment is providing education that allows students to develop real skills that can turn into real work for them in the future. And looking at how we can potentially weave in literacy and numeracy skills into that work that they're doing. So one of the projects that I helped to really spearhead this year was looking at creating a working market garden at the Malmesbury campus and to really embed literacy and numeracy as well as horticulture qualifications into that work. And that was quite a big idea. And I think where my strategic strength was able to really support that was to identify, okay, so who are the people that we'll need to bring into this project, who need to be our key stakeholders, and how can we draw all of these people together to create a program that will have real fidelity and longevity, because that can be tough in an environment like this. And how can we make sure that we're addressing the students' needs? How can we make sure that we're addressing the Department of Education's needs? How can we make sure that we're addressing the Department of Justice's needs as we create that project? And that involved quite a lot of work, and it also involved putting together a working group, which I was able to do, and then able to develop a project plan around that, which then also, obviously involves being able to predict what are the likely, identify what are the goals, what are the outcomes that we really want, and then identify the likely pathways to those goals, and then identify, I guess, maybe what are some of the challenges along the way that we might encounter, how can we work around them, who's got real strengths in this area that we can really leverage to support us. And that's, I guess, a working project that we're sort of still starting to implement now. We're still at the very, very beginning stages, but that's a real life translation of that skill.
Bravo! Able to translate such a complicated idea and project, but yet as I was listening to you talking, it seems so natural to you. It's so systematic structures, bringing again different people together and leveraging their strengths. Once again, I guess that is another highlight of how you have successfully again leveraged your strategic strengths in your workplace.
Yeah.
Well done. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm pretty proud of it.
Thumbs up. What about at a more, I guess, a personal or non-working area? How have you been using or leveraging your strategic strengths in your personal life?
Well, I guess, so I guess I use that strength in my personal life to try and navigate complicated family dynamics or complicated. I would say I use it much more with complicated family dynamics because I don't really have complicated friendship dynamics, but I guess I probably would access it if I did.
Yeah.
So in terms of like quite often my partner and my father disagree. And I think that I use that strategic strength a lot when I can envisage that a situation is they're going to have different views on that, to kind of set that up really well, to make sure that I am front loading that situation and making sure that I speak to my partner about it first and go, so, hey, this is the situation. How do you feel about that? What do we need to put in place so that you can feel comfortable with that? And then also do the same, I guess, with my dad and be like, hey, so this is how I predict that Jeff's going to think about this. What do you think about that? How do you feel about that? What can we do? So it's a bit of, I use it, I guess, as a tool for negotiation because I use it to predict. You know, it feels a little bit manipulative when I'm talking about it like this. But I guess what I'm doing is just using it as a tool to try and predict how they're going to feel about it. And what supports I'm going to need to put in place to make sure that everyone kind of feels okay about the situation that could get a bit messy if it's not handled really well. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I guess it's for me, the way I study is, your ability to create space for people to actually process what potentially could happen, but also giving them the confidence and the trust to say that, look, there are more than one ways to see things. Differences together at the end of it is about building a positive relationship. So it's not manipulative.
I mean, it feels manipulative when you talk about it, but really what it's doing is about saying to these people, hey, this could get tricky and here's how I'm going to hold you in this. Here's how I can support you in this. What do you think? Can we come to the party in this way? If you know that I've got your back here, can you give a little here?
Well, okay, that's all the time that we have for today. Once again, really appreciate you taking the time to share with us one of your top Clifton strengths. And thank you for watching. I'm Optimise from Strength Optimizers. We're here to help you bring out the best in you through optimizing your strengths. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Goodbye.